What is going on? This is your man L Jamal coming through with another edition of Upon Further Review. For this installment, of course, it is Black History Month. I wanted to get into some black cinema. Today, I wanted to cover Cooley High, premiering in 1975. I wanted to get into this. Not only was it a movie that I liked growing up, but also a movie that my family. My household liked growing up too. Now, years before I even saw the movie, my grandparents would talk about this movie a whole lot, and I pretty much, even before I saw the movie, kind of had an idea what it was about in my head. I would recount all these stories that they would tell me about the characters, and I would hear the names of Cochise and Puda and also Preach, and it stayed with me for a long time. So one day I happened to catch it. I believe it was either on demand or whatever on cable one day, and I was able to spot it out. And I was telling my grandparents, "Oh, it's on, it's on. Let's watch it. Let's enjoy this." And it really was a good day, and we really kicked back and enjoyed ourselves. And it was a really good experience to share that, to have them share that with me, a little piece of their their life and their background with me in this in the modern era. So I always like sharing that with them and having that moment with them, being especially now that my grandmother has passed. And it's a movie that she really liked a lot, coming up in her adult years, and when she was a young adult. And this is a movie that I really have grown fond of too. But Cooley High highlights the exploits of Preach, played by Glynn Turman. If you are familiar with the face, of course he was on HBO's The Wire, a couple other movies as well, and TV shows as well. But that was one of the main ones. He is a poet, a writer, and his friend Cochise, played by Lawrence Hilton-Jacobs. Again, somebody in our community that we know well of. I'm pretty sure you remember the face from the Jacksons, the American Story, that very long ass TV special about the Jacksons. He played Joe Jackson, and he's a star basketball player in the city of Chicago. Now, of course, this highlights their senior year at Edwin G. Cooley High in the year 1964. The writer of the movie, Eric Monti, was influenced by the neighborhood in which he grew up, the Cabrini Green housing projects in Chicago's near North Side, and the actual Cooley High in which he attended, Edwin G. Cooley High, that ended up closing in 1979. And this was a quote that I thought, this comes from him, Mr. Monti, the writer of the movie, and I pretty much I like this quote because it sums up pretty much what I saw in the movie. He went on to say, "I grew up in the Cabrini Green housing project, and I had one of the best times of my life, the most fun you could have while inhaling and exhaling." And I thought this was a really powerful quote because you pretty much see that through the beginning and all the way into the end of the movie. The movie does a good job, especially in the beginning, of giving you a showcase of what Chicago is and some of the best shots of a city skyline I have seen in any movie, regardless of era. And specifically because we're going back in time a little bit, this movie comes back in 1975. You kind of get a time capsule of what, and of course, is depicting the year 1964. So you kind of get a time capsule of what this city and what our peoples was doing back in this time, and it's really it's a treat to see, just to kind of see how things are not that different, how things are different in ways. But the movie starts off with Cochise waking up Preach. They got to get to class. They're a little bit late. They finally get to class, but of course, they're not having a good time. They're all bored in class. And Preach decides to figure out a plot to get them to weasel their way out of class. And while the teacher is going over the roll and everything, he snatches, or he's able to sneak and get some of her classmates to take her nail polish, and they take the nail polish and they put it on a napkin and they pretend that Poot is having a nosebleed. So this distracts the teacher enough, and it gives them the clearance to leave the classroom. And of course, everybody distracted. Cochise sneaks out with him. So it's Poot, Cochise, and Preach. They already ditching class. We already a few minutes in, and it's on. It's a party time. As they ditch class, they meet up with another partner of theirs, and they head to Lincoln Park. And this is where a couple of my most favorite scenes in the movie come in. The first is coming up at the concession stand. They already hitch a ride on the back of the bus. They get the ride to the zoo, and they get to the concession stand, and Of course, you don't have enough money to get, the hot dogs. So Preach is distracting the concession stand lady, and he's going back and forth about the hot dogs. Well, where's the ketchup? There ain't no ketchup. We don't have ketchup. What you mean? And so, it's a back and forth, and he finally says, what? You know what? You want it? You like ketchup? You like mustard on your hot dog? She said, yeah, I like ketchup on my hot dog. Here, you take it. Gives it back. Mind you, Coach Cheese and Poodle, they selling snacks, and they have the pot that they all selling snacks. So they make off with a good amount. And after which, they get to the gorilla cage, and this is another funny ass scene. And the boys are sitting there messing with the gorilla. They open this door to kind of get into the back, kind of into the closer to his cage. And they start roasting. They start roasting Pooh. They say, yo, daddy look like the gorilla. Yo, daddy eat like the gorilla. And Pooh is like, man, you gotta lay up off me and the gorilla pretty much. And he's like, man, you gotta treat the gorilla with respect. As soon as he says that, the gorilla throws a big ass pile of doo-doo on his shirt. And everybody starts busting out laughing. Even the gorilla is rolling around basically laughing. So two of the funniest things so much so far in the movie. In the beginning, it just kind of gets you going, and it's hilarious. But after chilling at the zoo for a while, the crew heads back to the neighborhood to shoot some hoops. But Poot also needed to change his clothes and get some textbooks. Later on, everybody would meet up at the neighborhood spot, Martha's, pretty much a chill out spot. There's food and all that, food and drink. Pretty much everybody slides there after school, and pretty much everybody in the community, not just the kids. Now, Preach. This is where Preach finally lays his eyes on Brenda. Now, she's a big part of the story. And, of course, she's the light-skinned, love interest of Preach. And definitely bougie. And definitely in the beginning wasn't trying to give Preach no play. So, you get that dichotomy. They have a little bit of a back and forth. Now, what Preach likes to do is he likes to come over to Martha's and he likes to shoot dice with Robert, with two cats, two older G's from the neighborhood. I wouldn't say they, necessarily like OGs, but they older than the high school kids. So he's shooting dice with Robert and Stone. He ain't supposed to be doing that, so Martha comes out and chases him out with a meat cleaver. Everybody in the spot, they find it funny. They juiced about that, and you see already some wacky stuff going on. But now later on, Coach East will come back home, and he will find out that he was actually accepted into Grambling State on a basketball scholarship. In the beginning, I said he was pretty much an all-city athlete. Again, he was being offered scholarships, and this is a really powerful scene to me because you kind of see the environment a lot of these guys are living in. And of course, we're talking about 1960 Chicago in the Cabrini Green projects. A lot of these guys financially aren't living so well, and in this scene you see Cotrice's little brother, a little baby, and and they living in this poverty. You're not judging them because you understand what it is, but the little brother, he has Cotrice's scholarship letter, and he actually dropped it in the toilet. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't, and you just see it. But he's able to get the letter out of the toilet, and he's able to read it and decipher that he's been given a scholarship. But it just kind of shows you just kind of the situation these people are in, and that was his opportunity to get out of that situation and eventually, hopefully, be able to help his family. So it's just, again, to see that kind of powerful scene like that, and to have that triumph at the end of it, that was really solid on the part of the direction of the movie. Now, to celebrate all this, he links up with the squad to partake in some of that classic Wild Irish Rose. That is a malt liquor from back in the day. I don't even think it exists anymore. It's something that my grandpa would refer to as rock gut. It's pretty much trash, and it will fuck up your insides. But again, it was cheap, and all the young cats that wanted to sneak and get some liquor, that'd pretty much be their first step back in the day. But after they get a little tipsy, they hit up a quarter party hosted by one of their classmates, Donna. At the party, Preach sees Brenda again, and although she originally rejects him, she does open up to him a little bit when she discovers he has a genuine interest in writing and poetry. So they talk a little bit about poetry and writing, and they're kind of bonding a little bit. But the party gets crashed when another cat from the school shows up named Damon, and he sees Coach Cheese dancing with his girlfriend Loretta, and they get into a squabble. Now, of course, I get it. Damon sees sees Coach Cheese with his girl. But your girl, she obviously open. So of course I'm mad at Coach Cheese, but it wasn't like, I'd have been like, yo, we done. I don't need to know no explanations. You think you all that? I wouldn't be mad at Coach Cheese. He's the star basketball player. The girl think he got the juice. I'm not so mad. It's the girl that was the problem, not so much Coach Cheese. But anyways, Coach Cheese had to get into a fight, and he had to defend himself. He ended up winning the fight, but mind you, Damon, he will still be in the picture. This ain't it for him. He will return. Now after the party, Coach Cheese pooped, and Preach meet up with another one of their buddies, Tyrone, at Martha's. And a little later, Stone and Robert will show back up and will pull up to the spot in a Cadillac that they stole. Now, Preach and Coach Cheese will go along and ride with them just around the town. They will cruise through their neighborhood, downtown Chicago, as well as the Gold Coast, which again is another area, well-to-do area in Chicago. Now, Preach will go on and on about, his fabricated stories about driving for Chi-Town's elites and convinces Stone to let him drive. And as you can tell, that it doesn't, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it don't go right. And first of all, Preach can't drive. Everything he's been saying, like I said, is fabricated. So he draws some attention to the cops. It starts a chase, but, they are able to get away despite hitting another car. Now, the next day, they decided to go to the movies, and they were all short on cash, so they had to do something. So Preach and Coach Cheese get the idea to hit up two prostitutes and then disguise themselves as cops. And they go ahead, because they had like one of them little fake badges laying around, like one of those little toy badges around in their house. And they decided to hit up the two prostitutes, like I said, disguised as cops, and kind of, was shaking them down. And then one of the prostitutes said, "Look, here's $10, leave us alone." Blah 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 blah. Long story short, the hookers find out, but it's too late. They already down the street on the way to the movies. But at the movies, the guys check out Godzilla versus Mothra, but Puda, he ends up losing his seat. When he goes to get some snacks, Coach Cheese and Preach got their girlfriends with him, so they not really interested in giving him a spot. And so he's kind of shut out. He's trying to find himself a spot, and he ends up bumping into a gangster disciple. And this gangster disciple, I don't know, I guess he's having a bad day. He gets set off by this little kid kind of bumping it, or this relatively young cat bumping into him. And he starts to give him trouble. But then out of nowhere, a member of another gang called the Counts called out that gangster disciple for picking on Poop. And an all-out fight would break out in the movie theater. They ripped the screen up. It was pandemonium. It was wild because I've heard of many situations in which that had happened, stuff like that went down back in the day. Again, I can't think of any times where that had happened. It happens, but not in the movie theater. Like, I've heard about, I've seen it happen in the mall. It might have happened at the schoolyard for us, but I've never seen it at a movie theater, and they ripping down the projectors and all that. That was crazy. Again, when my grandparents were like, yeah, that happened. That used to happen all the time. Well, not all the time, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it would happen. I'm like, damn, for real? Okay. So you kind of, again, like, especially having my grandparents there to kind of watch it with me, kind of go back, and we used to talk, and I would ask them questions. Like, did y'all used to kind of do that too? Yeah, and it was really cool actually to kind of touch base with them on that. But anyways, after the movies and everything, the next day Preacher finally gets some alone time with Brenda. Now again, like I said, they had already kind of made this connection, and he finally gets Brenda to come over to the crib. And again, one thing I did like about this movie is that of course it was mentioned that she was light skinned, and it was references to her being high yellow, of course, but Preach himself, and what I liked about how they did it was they didn't make his obsession over her based on that. Definitely she was pretty, definitely she ended up being, of course, when she started to open up as a character, you started to see, okay, she's intelligent, she has some intelligence with her, she has a keen mind. And I think it's those things that Preach liked, and I liked how the movie highlighted that instead of her just being, just super pretty or light skinned or whatever like that, because it was mentioned amongst other people. Coach Cheese had kind of joked about it once, like, you ain't got no shot at that, but Preach had never came at her like, oh man, you some light skinned honey and all this, that, and the other. So I definitely liked that. It kept it down to earth, and again, this movie was really down to earth. It wasn't some Hollywood production. Well, I mean, of course, hey, but it wasn't Hollywood in the sense of it was inauthentic. It was authentic to the point of, I believe, the city, of course, the background, and just the situations themselves were just really organic, and just something that you would definitely see back in the day in those neighborhoods. Now, again, like I said, they get closer. He brings over Brenda to the house, and of course, they end up, having sex. And they do it. They have a they have a good moment. But Preach decides to open his big ass mouth and reveal that he and, of course, Coach Cheese had a bet. They did have a bet to see whether or not he was going to be able to hit that. And again, he slipped up and said it. I wouldn't have said nothing. And another thing about Preach at the same time is, although I liked, kind of his healthiness, or I guess, well, let's just say, in lack of better terms, he was still dealing with somebody else as well. So he kind of put himself in a position there. He kind of got the girl that he liked, but again, yeah. So it didn't really all work all out. Brenda ended up storming out the house that day. Wasn't talking to him for a minute. There's also a scene where, Preacher's would-be ex, or pretty much his ex at this point, but was the girl that he was talking to while he was trying to get at Brenda. Brenda hadn't been talking to him like 2-3 days. She finally sees him when the ex is around. She kisses him right in front of the girl, and that sets that situation off. So again, not so much good luck for Preach right now. Finally, when the guys return to school, Coach East and Preach are arrested for grand theft auto. Yes, we're talking about the previous night's encounters with Robert and Stone. The police show up. They right in the classroom. They come up in there. They like, we need Coach East and Preach. Of course, I think they use their real names, of course. But I'm like, damn, oh, for real. Now, at the station, they meet up again with Stone and Robert, who were also taken in. The boys were saved, though, by their history teacher, Mr. Mason, played by Garrett Morris, another phenomenal black actor who's been in many countless movies, TV shows. The one that I can think off the top of my head is the Jamie Foxx show, but that's just because that's just the first one that came to mind, and I brought it up the other day. Now, he happens to be friends with the arresting officer. They go back. They over here sharing. Again, this must be the time period. They over here sharing a joint in the fucking interrogation room, whatever. They over here sharing joints and shit. He like, man, can you let these guys go? They good kids, even though they don't go to class. That's how like, people had your back. You gotta respect it. And this ended up helping them out. Now, I don't know if this was the way that the movie planned it, or how they shot it, or if this was just the procedure of the time. Again, like I told you, like right when they were brought in to be questioned, they met up with Stone and Robert. Now, upon their release, they had to go past Stone and Robert, and Stone and Robert saw them leaving. This gives them the impression of, oh, they snitched on us, because again, because of their record, Stone and Robert had to go down. But the thing is, the cold part is, for what it's worth now, Mr. Mason would actually put in a good word for them too. It kind of say, hey, but what about these guys? And dude say straight up, the officer was like, I can't even do nothing about them. They got a record. He's like, I'm already, you already, pushing my hand by letting Coach Cheese and Preach go. They need to be taught a lesson. This is a brother now. And he let them go, but Stone and Robert didn't have so much luck. And again, maybe this is the procedure at the time. They had them in the same room right before they went to get questioned, and then as they were leaving, they exited. Coach Cheese and Preach exited in the same line of sight. So it gives you the impression that they snitched, and they didn't. They had somebody putting a good word for them, but that's not how it saw. That's not how it was saw, and that's not how it was perceived. And of course, word travels thanks to none other than your boy Damon, the sucker that couldn't fight at the quarter party. Yep, he opened his mouth, got everybody mad at Coach Sheets, all at the basketball practice, and it's all bad. He opened, he's like, man, he basically he was like, yeah, they snitched on him, and they didn't. Again, they did not. But eventually, Preach will find out through Mr. Mason that it was him that helped him out. He put in a good word for him, and he tried to catch it up with Coach Sheets to let him know. He bumps into Jimmy Ray, which is Coach Sheets' older cousin. Again, another all-star He's been in so many black movies. It's not even funny. If you look at the man who played, I think his name Jimmy Ray, that man looks the same now. I think maybe with some gray hairs that as he did back in 1979.